Hello, my friends. So I have an interesting article for you. This article was referred to me by one of my viewers and Patreon supporters, C. Stu, and it is a really interesting article. It is a clear challenge between church and state, the majority religion versus the minority religion. So I'm just going to read you this article. A link to it will be below so you can read it at your own leisure. From the New Mexican by Rebecca Moss. Bloomfield. Small cardboard signs began appearing last year on front lawns in this Four Corners town. Each bore the words of the Ten Commandments, which begin with "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." The signs are displayed in support of a 5-foot-tall granite marker engraved with the commandments that's been standing at the entrance to Bloomfield City Hall since 2011. Over the past several years, most residents and officials in this town in oil-dependent, heavily Republican San Juan County have said the monument represents their Christian beliefs, and they want it to remain on government property. But the commandments also have sparked litigation that pits many of the town against a small coven of Wiccan residents, who say the monument undermines their religious freedom. And it does, and they have every right to challenge it. The American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit against the city on behalf of Jane Felix and B.N. Kuhn, both members of the Wiccan group. Alliance Defending Freedom, an Arizona-based organization that calls itself a legal ministry, is representing Bloomfield. The group advocates for religious inclusion in government. Its high-profile cases have challenged transgender bathroom laws and have defended measures allowing Christian-owned businesses to discriminate against gay and lesbian customers. Both the U.S. District Court in New Mexico and the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of Felix and Kuhn, saying the monument violates the First Amendment's prohibition of government endorsement of religion and must come down. But the community remains steadfast. More than 1,000 people signed a petition in support of the commandments, and the yard signs, sold at local stores for $15, are part of efforts to raise funds for the legal battle. The city is considering seeking an en banc review in the 10th Circuit, in which all judges on the appeals court would reconsider the case, or bringing the case before the U.S. Supreme Court, where, in my opinion, the Supreme Court would rule in favor of the Constitution, because historically they always have, but regardless. But in this 2-traffic light town of just over 7,000 people, the fight for the Ten Commandments represents a larger battle over communal identity, and, some argue, the price of homogeny. David Hawley, 68, a traveling Jehovah's Witness, ministers in the Four Corners area who was knocking on doors in Bloomfield on a recent morning, said, "It is rare we come across someone who doesn't respect the Bible or have a copy of it." There are 12 churches of the Christian, Roman Catholic, and Mormon faith in Bloomfield, more than there are restaurants, bars, and grocery stores. Only gas stations outnumber places of worship. To pray in a Jewish temple or a Muslim mosque, a practitioner would have to travel the 170 miles to Albuquerque or cross state lines into Colorado. The Wiccan coven in Bloomfield at the center of the legal fight is made up of about a dozen people. Coven member Tracy Tucker, 53, said discrimination against the group did not begin with the monument. She has lived in Bloomfield since 1979, working in senior care and for a time operating a gift shop with pagan items. Some people thought the store should be shut down, she said, and several children in the town refused to befriend her kids because of her religion. I've always felt like an outsider, Tucker said. Felix, who was raised Lutheran but began practicing Wicca in the 1980s, collected more than 50 signatures on a petition asking to remove the monument, but she said the city ignored the document. Some people wouldn't sign it because they feared retribution, she added. Andy Schultz, lead attorney on the case of the ACLU in New Mexico, Andy Schultz, lead attorney on the case for the ACLU in New Mexico, said the potential for an exclusionary environment is exactly why the U.S. Constitution exists. To make sure that the majority doesn't always get its will because there are some values that are more important than what the majority says. Others in Bloomfield don't see it that way. The Ten Commandments monument needs to stay because that's what we believe, said Abel Khan, 72, who lives in nearby Blanco. Okay, she doesn't even live in that town. Okay. That's what everyone else here believes, and the ones that don't believe it should be burned at the stake. Wow, okay. So, a cement depiction of the Ten Commandments is, in her eyes, more important than a human life. 2 human lives. Potentially 50 human lives. Wow. What a good Christian. Al Khan's daughter-in-law, Sheila, a retired corrections officer, pointed out that just 2 people signed their names to the lawsuit, and she believes they need to leave. Well, first of all, Al Khan's daughter-in-law, it doesn't matter how many people signed the petition, it is against the Constitution, and no, they do not need to leave their hometown. You need to become more tolerant or get the fuck out. About 60 people gathered to pray around the monument after the Court of Appeals ruling November 9th. At a well-attended town hall meeting on the issue 5 days later, people urged the city council to file another appeal. Okay, good luck with that. We need to stand up for God, and then he will bless us. What? Okay. Anne Frost of nearby Farmington said at the meeting, we need to eliminate the silliness of church versus state. First of all, the Christian God is supposed to be omnipotent, all-powerful, all-knowing. He's basically created everything. He doesn't need any help. Whatever he wants will happen. If he started life on earth, he can end it, or he doesn't need any help. We need to eliminate the silliness of church versus state. No. You need to respect that our Constitution is leaning and is basically saying, but not in the exact same words, that there is a division between church and state. The majority religion has no authority. The minority religion has no authority. All are treated equally in the eyes of church and state. Excuse me, I mean in federal, state, and local levels. Former City Council Kevin Mousey has been one of the strongest defenders of the monument. He first proposed a public display of the commandments in 2007 and raised nearly $4,000 from local churches and other donors to have created and installed. Residents who objected, including Felix, initially succeeded in halting the project. But later that year, the council enacted a policy allowing anyone to suggest a historical monument for the municipal lawn that wasn't endorsed by the city. Under these guidelines, Mousey again proposed the Ten Commandments. The measure was approved, and the monument eventually was installed on the lawn at City Hall with a 14-inch deep concrete foundation. Small letters at the bottom of the monument read, "Any message hereon is of the donors and not the city of Bloomfield." So basically they made this huge monument of the Ten Commandments, and then down at the very bottom they just put the words, "Any message here thereon is of the donors and not the city of Bloomfield," thinking that that is going to make it all okay. Well, let's see what happens with that. In a dedication ceremony, July 4th, 2011, a church deacon said a prayer. 6 months later, the ACLU filed a lawsuit against the city, seeking to get the monument removed. Mousy then proposed the installation of 3 other monuments. All 3 are now standing on the City Hall lawn. One with the Gettysburg Address, another displaying the Declaration of Independence, and a third with the Bill of Rights. Mousy, the city manager, and mayor of Bloomfield all declined to comment for this story. Surprising. Attorney Jonathan Scruggs, who is representing the city for Alliance Defending Freedom, said the loss of the Commandments monument would mean that people in the community can't acknowledge their own history and tradition. They can't pass that down and celebrate it. No. No one can take your beliefs. That is protected in the Constitution. You simply just cannot force your beliefs on other people. Why do Christians not understand the difference between these two things? There is a difference between stripping one of beliefs and not allowing anyone to believe what they want versus shoving your belief down someone else's throat. There's a big, huge difference between those two things. Regardless, U.S. District Court Judge James A. Parker disagreed with Scruggs' argument, saying a 2014 opinion that the monument contains religious speech and violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. The Court of Appeals agreed that the monument represented government endorsement of religion, and said the installation of their monuments, along with a disclaimer saying the city didn't endorse their words, didn't change that fact. Really, no shit. The last time the U.S. Supreme Court heard a Ten Commandments case was in 2005. The court heard 2 such cases on the same day and issued a different verdict for each. A 40-year-old statue at the Texas state capitol was allowed to remain there because justices said it was established as part of a larger historical display and there were no religious implications. But a small framed picture of the Ten Commandments in a courthouse in Kentucky was ordered to come down. The court said the display was intended as religious speech without any historical context. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said a policy or display violates the First Amendment when it appears to place a higher value on one person's beliefs over another person's. Schultz said that's what is at stake in Bloomfield. You're going to be very hard-pressed to find any community that is homogeneous in a belief system, and that is why the Establishment Clause is there, to ensure the government is always neutral, that even the most slim minority of community members will have their beliefs respected, he said. And he is absolutely correct. I believe that is exactly what our forefathers intended. On a recent afternoon, Felix sat at the Three Rivers Brewery in Farmington, wearing a silver pentagram-shaped pendant that she said represented the natural elements: wind, fire, earth, air, and water. Oh, okay, that's interesting. That's her interpretation of it. She said most people take one look at the necklace and say, "Oh, you're a devil worshiper." Of course. Of course, you're wearing a pentagram. You must worship the devil. Christian Logic 101. A more permanent symbol of her faith is tattooed on her forehead, a fingernail-sized blue crescent moon. Oh, that sounds cool. I like that. Felix said she doesn't mind if her neighbors showcase their faith on their front lawns, but she believes the government shouldn't endorse such a display of any faith. And I absolutely would agree with her. The justices made it very clear why the decision was upheld, and I think it feels like one religion trying to push their agenda on everyone, Felix said. And it's time to move on. So that was a great article. I think it's very important for people to be aware of stuff like this happening. These little battles really set the tone for our nation as a whole, protecting the division, the establishment of the division between church and state, and also minority versus the majority of religions. So thank you so much, C-Stu. This was a great article. Again, links to it will be below. Thank you so much, and blessed be.